And welcome to another episode of This Uncanny Earth, episode 352. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Mary Celeste on our three adventured ghost ship patterns that we're doing. As always, I am your host, Robert Solomon. And above me, on my screen, anyways, to my right is the one, the only, the Spider himself. He's got a new album coming out, so definitely want to be checking that out. And to my left is Steven with his Winchester Brothers brand shirt. He's getting ready. He's ready to go for the
Yep.
day. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Good.
Good, good. It's been a day, but we're here. We
Good.
are
We're
here.
here. We're here. So, Spider, tell us, when is the album dropping? Or is it already dropped?
Well, the single comes out on Monday, March 9th, which is next week, 2026. It'll be on spiderinthehall.bandcamp.com at midnight on that day. It'll slowly trickle to streaming services afterwards because of procedural expletive. So, but it'll get there. Once that is out, I will make a formal announcement for the actual full album release, which is in early summer. So I can't say the exact date yet. I know what it is, but I can't drop it yet until after this Monday. So stay tuned for that.
Are you going to have physical media?
I think so. I'm exploring some options now. I'm exploring options where people can just order at will without me having to have a stockpile and a supply, and they can just get what they like in as many copies as they like.
Awesome. And hopefully autographed. Make sure those are autographed.
I'll probably order a few myself for that purpose, so there'll be some certain deluxe packages available.
Ah, there it is. There it is. Okay, well, Steven, your
Yep.
show. Go ahead and get us started.
All right. First, I'd like to ask you both if either one of you know anything about the Mary Celeste first. Let's go ahead and start with you, Rob.
I went ahead and went into this straight blind. I know absolutely nothing because I want to check your information, see what you know about it. I got a little thing next to me pulled up about it. So, if I can look over there, then I can look over there. But I wanted to come into this relatively blind because I like doing that sometimes. I like to see what people say about it. This way I don't come in with any
Preconceived notions.
preconceived notions or anything else. This is something new to me. So to have it taught to me, that's fantastic.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And what about you, Spider?
I've as a kid, just like with last week's Flight 19 and everything in the Bermuda Triangle, it was one of many stories that I read about that I was big into because I was huge into those kind of like missing ships and missing planes and all this stuff. Just where could they go as a kid? And it is one of the most famous ghost ship stories that we know of. There have been plenty over hundreds of years or longer, but it is, I believe, the one that most often when people say ghost ship stories, it's the one that comes up.
Yep. And for good reason, because it has been inspired in pop culture many times. There was an episode of The X-Files back in the day that had it. It originally aired on March 10th, 1995, and it was season 2, episode 19, called Dodd Calm. And it wasn't centered around the Mary Celeste in particular, but just ghost ships in general. And it was basically they went to check out this ship, and the whole crew had mysteriously disappeared. And it's just very similar to, the Mary Celeste. So I thought
It
I would
was a
bring that up.
fantastic episode, by the
Yeah.
way, because it had this cinematography where it was filmed as one continuous shot throughout almost the entirety of the episode. And the way that the camera would swing from corridor to corridor. Oh, I remember watching it because I was big into that show at the time. And it was it was incredibly intense the way that the camera motions were. Loved it.
The cinematography was great too, is what you're saying.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the Mary Celeste, as you mentioned a minute ago, is obviously one of the most famous ghost ships. It was originally discovered adrift in the Atlantic Ocean on the 5th of December, 1872, nearly 400 miles east of the Azores. And it was a 100-foot brigantine, which is why they called them, brigands. And it was in seaworthy condition with its full cargo of 1,701. I don't know why they had one extra. That's a weird number, but that's what the information says. barrels of industrial alcohol, and it was all intact, supposedly, and all their belongings had been left, including the belongings of his wife and his 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. So they don't really know what happened to the ship. Everything seemed to be in good condition for the most part. They did find about 3 or 4 feet of water at the bottom of the ship, and they found a pump that had been damaged. But the thing is, the pump had been damaged, and so they had to turn it off. But what I read said that it was likely clogged with coal dust and construction debris, but it was completely normal for that to happen. And it said that, even with this filling up like that, it would have been normal, and they would have just, tried to fix it later, but they wouldn't have, ran away from the ship as suddenly as everyone thinks they did. And their last log entry was dated for November 25th, 1872, and there was nothing, weird or strange about the entry. It just said that it was near the Azores, which was, where they found it. So nothing strange there. So the only thing that was really missing was a lifeboat. There was one missing lifeboat, and they had a rope that was frayed at the end. So that's what the most popular theory is they somehow escaped in the lifeboat. So what do you guys think about this story in general? What do you think, Spider?
It is fascinating. There's the biggest key takeaway is that there was nothing obvious about the ship that may have prevented it from being seaworthy.
Yeah.
It almost seems like it was a moment of panic, that something happened that maybe they thought it was going to suddenly stop being seaworthy in a really emergency kind of way. And somebody freaked out, said, "We got to get out of here," and managed to convince everybody else that it was true. And they got off in an area that maybe was not friendly, either as far as society wise or weather wise, or because
Pirate.
maybe they jumped the gun, they might not have taken enough supplies, so they just starved at sea and the boat sank, or who knows. It's plenty to speculate, but that's my initial theory about it, is
Yeah.
that someone believed that something so sudden was going to happen or was imminently about to happen that they were able to convince everybody just how bad it was going to be, and everybody jumped ship. And they jumped ship at the worst possible time and place, and they paid the price. And the ship, not being in that bad of shape after all, kept on going.
Yeah, and those are two of the popular theories. Is some people think that maybe the Captain Briggs may have smelled alcohol at some point, like fumes, and he may have thought that they were in danger of the ship exploding. So that's why they think maybe he sent everyone out to the lifeboat, and they had it attached to the rope, planning to go back to it later. But then something happened, the rope snapped, and then maybe they got lost out at sea. That's one theory. And another theory, like you said, maybe some not so nice people. They think maybe they got invaded by pirates and they were forced off of the ship that way. But they don't really know. Rob, what do you think? Do you have any ideas?
So what we're looking at, let's see. So Briggs, the wife, the 2-year-old daughter,
Yeah.
7, that's 10 people on a ship. We got 10 people on a ship. So we got 10 people on a ship. Those people, if they're ship hands, they should know the ship. Was the alcohol set for sale, or was it a private stock of pure alcohol? Was this? I don't think it was alcohol in terms of like drinking alcohol.
Yeah,
Just
no. I got that right here. Hang on.
industrial type of alcohol.
Yeah, it was industrial alcohol. Let me see. It had a specific name
That sounds
right
like
here.
something a quitter would say.
Got it.
Industrial alcohol is what it says. 6 months worth of food and water and their personal belongings.
Okay, so this
It
was
was
probably
going from
what-
New
what's-
York to Italy.
What's the year on this thing?
The 1872.
So I would be pressed to see if there was plastic barrels, which I doubt were made.
Mhm.
It would have been wooden barrels.
Yes.
And wooden barrels are somewhat porous in regards to gases being able to escape from them. These people, I take it, weren't very up on how alcohol works and how it will eventually After a long period of time, depending on how pure it is, it will evaporate given the right circumstances. So the alcohol proceeded to sort of sweat through or go through the barrels into the area from which it was done. The captain smelled it, said, "We got to get off the ship." Doesn't explain the pump damage, but the pump damage they said was due to construction debris, dust, and such like that, which happens. They decide to get on this lifeboat, attach a rope to the lifeboat to the ship in case the ship exploded due to the exposure of alcohol fumes. I take it the place wasn't probably well ventilated, because if it was, they wouldn't have had to worry about an explosion if it was well ventilated. So my estimation, they got scared. But the thing is, what is kind of striking to me is there's 10 people on board outside of the baby, obviously, because the baby doesn't know anything about alcohol or fumes or things of that nature. If it did, I'd be, hard pressed to not think the baby was in on it. You have 9 people. All right, 9 people. One of those people had to be somewhat of an expert on the stock that they were carrying. At least the cargo that you have on your ship, you have to know somewhat about it. This isn't Dracula's ship where there's just a bunch of boxes and Dracula's carcass is in one of those waiting to get people. That's not how this works. Was the ship itself a private ship, or was it a business ship? Was it
I believe it was a business ship.
So it was part of a company, correct?
Yes.
Did this company have multiple ships?
They did. Yes.
Okay.
Hang on. So, I've got the
you're fine.
Guy's name here somewhere, because I got the page pulled up right here. So it was initially named the Amazon a while back when it was first built, and it was a merchant brigantine. And it was initially discovered by a group, another brigantine called the De Gratia, is the one that initially found her.
It was a British vessel. Yeah.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Going off of all of that, now let me ask you one more thing before I put all this together.
Sorry, real quick. Here it says it was built in Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, when it was initially built, when it launched under British registration as the Amazon in 1861. So it was like a British ship initially. Joshua Dewis was the actual builder's name.
So essentially, and then it was found. It was found 10 days prior.
Yeah.
The last log entry was 10 days prior. So let me ask this: do the Azores, or because that's around Portugal, are either of those two things? Are either of those two things known for bad weather or any sort of weather anomalies in that area?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So it looks like everybody panicked based off of speculation that the ship was going to explode, right?
Yeah.
In that regard, I would say that, but my question is, what would have frayed the rope? And why would they, there's a lot of questions that we don't have answers to. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to ascertain the reasoning as to why they would have abandoned the ship. Was any of the food storage or anything like that taken with them on that boat?
No, that's one of the things that makes it so mysterious, is everything was left perfectly intact. And there were rumors that the food was warm when they left, but I've looked into those, and that was complete myth, complete fallacy, and there is no actual credible evidence that the food is warm. And that was actually used in a story by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to give it a bit more mystery to it.
One quick fact to add, because you were asking about this, the weather.
Yeah, go ahead.
The weather. That's the only reason I'm going to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
In this area of the world, by the Azores, the climate is very mild for such a northerly location, and it's being influenced by its distance from the continents and by the passing of the Gulf Stream. And because of the marine influence, temperatures remain mild year-round.
Okay,
so it's not known for wild storms.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they attach this lifeboat to the boat, what were they? Did they expect the Mary Celeste to pull them because they didn't have the technology for this to operate on its own? It had to have a
Yeah,
captain to
they
guide it
were
into port.
they were expecting to go back on the ship later after the fumes had like aired out a little bit.
So they would pull on the rope on with the lifeboat.
Yeah.
Which I get, but what strikes me as odd is there was nobody on the ship itself, like not even
Exactly.
somebody to steer the ship.
Yeah.
Because then what happens if you run into obviously mild weather, mild waves, things of that nature, but you would want a captain on boat to essentially guide the ship.
That makes
But
sense, but my understanding was the reason they all got off was the fumes. Even if they didn't explode, the fumes themselves would be very toxic and
and so maybe the captain's quarters didn't have, or wherever they piloted the ship from,
yeah.
didn't have the open air to enable for the fumes to not intensify in that location.
Yeah. But it still wouldn't explain why the rope got frayed.
Because it looks like the Mary Celeste, if I pull up an image here, it looks like the wheel would have been on deck.
Yeah.
It would have been like a lot of boats that you see nowadays, a lot of your cargo ships
out in the open, right?
It's in more of a closed room high above, so you're watching everything around you. But the way this painting looks, it looks like it would have been open air. So there would have been no concern for toxic fumes because your toxic fumes would have aired right up. They would have went right out the window. There wouldn't have been any reason. Now, I don't think the wheel would have been below deck because that wouldn't make any sense. You would want to be able to see where you're going. So for me, I would have to say honestly that part is interesting because the wheel would be out and open. Even the fumes wouldn't have gotten to them like that unless the alcohol was right below the wheel of the ship. If the alcohol was right below the wheel of the ship, I could see that being a factor. But if it's not, then that's a tough one. This seems more like a case of maybe they were boarded and
a good idea
off of the ship, but
even
nothing was stolen. Nothing was stolen.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Did the captain have a notorious past, or did he have anything in the past that might have came back to haunt him?
Nothing that I found in my research.
Okay, all right. That's all I have. Like I have a lot of questions, and we don't have a lot of answers. But these are questions that I'm trying to ascertain the reasoning as to why you're going to leave a ship, and the concept of the alcohol being out. I mean, I get you would be afraid, but most captains in every story I've ever read, they go down with the ship.
Yeah.
So at least somebody's going to stay on board because that ship is gigantic. Like it's a bigger ship. It's not a man of war. But it is a brigantine ship, and those
brigantine was a big ship,
and they were able to bring it back until many years later when someone wrecked it off the coast of Haiti for insurance fraud.
Oh, a brigantine ship! That it's a big ship. It looks like it. What it has 2 masts and then many sails, in front and
like
and
your
to the
classic
side.
galleon.
Yeah. So I can't buy into the fact of them just aborting, getting off of a ship, aborting the mission and getting into a lifeboat and being dragged by this ship.
Yeah.
So, and was it frayed at, well, obviously it'd been frayed to the lifeboat, but was there more rope attached, do they think? Or was it like a middle part that was frayed? Like how much of the rope was
exactly
found?
Where it was frayed.
Did it say how the length of the rope that was found?
It did not.
Okay.
It just said that it was frayed.
Okay. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah. And they think it could have been done by a freak wave or a snap tow line, possibly.
The tow line I could see because it's a giant ship, right? And it's pulling a lifeboat. A lifeboat isn't going to be able to hold many people. Those 10 people were probably crammed on that lifeboat.
Yeah. It probably wasn't very comfortable.
I honestly would have taken my chances on the ship, to be fair. To be fair, I'd have taken my chances on the ship. There's food, it's a giant ship. Like I said, usually the captain goes down with the ship. So the fact that the captain abandoned ship, That's
Must
kind
have
of
been something serious.
concerning for me. So I don't know. Did they ever find any bodies ever at all? Ever anybody's?
No, not one.
Any record of people landing in a new part of the world at all ever?
Nope, because that was actually one of the other theories is maybe when they went out to sea, they, got somewhere else and landed safely because some people thought it might have been a mutiny. They didn't like the captain. And then once they ended their mutiny and they got their new captain, they were like, oh, hey, I actually don't know how to operate a ship like this. And then they had no choice but to get on the lifeboat and then try to get to land. But there's no record of them ever making it to land either. So
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
continue. I that's what I had. That's
And
an interesting thing.
they had a sounding rod to measure the depth of the water, but it was unreliable. So one theory is they may have left because they couldn't accurately measure the water, and combined with the rough seas, a faulty chronometer, and possibly the alcohol fumes, as we mentioned earlier, that might be the biggest reasons why they got into the lifeboat for a temporary evacuation until whatever happened that caused the rope to fray.
Well, it also says that he pretty much handpicked the crew, and that he was excited about the crew. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Continue. Sorry.
And then some people think that the ship may have been cursed because there were many accidents on the ship over the years. Back in the early years before 1868, when it was still known as the Amazon, its first captain, Robert McClellan, passed away of illness just days after its initial launch in 1861. It was run aground in a storm in 1867 and abandoned off of Cape Breton Island. And earlier captains also suffered many accidents, including a collision that sank another ship.
But it didn't sink that ship.
Yeah. You sunk my battleship.
Facts.
And that was all before it even got renamed to the Mary Celeste in the first place. And then go ahead.
It already had a history.
Yeah, that's where we're getting at.
That's interesting that it already had a history going in to another history. Okay.
Yeah. And not sure. This was proven false as just part of the Arthur Conan Doyle story from 1884. But I thought it was very interesting because it was portrayed to have a violent, mysterious end, spreading the idea of the haunted ship, obviously. But more particularly was the supernatural stuff surrounding it, because as we talked about last week, they have a lot of superstitions out on the oceans, like sailors and stuff. So one thing that they have a superstition about is Friday. And because that was the day of the crucifixion of Jesus. So they didn't want that because they felt that, Friday was an unlucky day to launch the ship. So in the fictionalized story, they launched the ship on Friday with Captain Friday, and it was built on a Friday and launched on a Friday. So that was fun.
This very much is very akin to the colony of Roanoke.
Yes, and Oak Island. It reminded me of both of those.
And that's the thing. I mean, both of them have likely happenings, right? Roanoke itself, I don't know if you two agree, but I think they sort of blended in with an Indian tribe or a wandering tribe that was going by.
Yeah.
For me, that makes the most sense, right?
I agree.
And
then they just assimilated.
But this one is strange because these people would want their ship back. Did the captain own the ship, or was the ship owned by the company?
I believe the captain owned the ship himself. Let me see what it says right here. It says initially it was built by Joshua Dewis, Spencer's Island in Nova Scotia, when it was the Amazon. But then when it was sold as the Mary Celeste, it was owned by the Principality of New York or Boston. So it was not owned by the individual, but rather the New York.
Oh, okay.
And they did go back and get the ship. They got the ship and they brought it back. And that was later on, many years in 1885, where its final captain, G.C. Parker, wrecked it in Haiti for an insurance scam. that obviously failed, and he was later convicted. And
The
that's how it
interesting-
eventually, finally ended.
Unlike the Flying Dutchman, which we talked about on last week's episode, it disappeared.
Yeah.
They don't know where that ship went. It's still floating around somewhere, probably, causing trouble. But this one they actually found.
Yep.
Even though it had been wrecked a couple times, because I did read that it was overinsured. It was highly overinsured. So what better way to get a couple dollars than, oops, sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to, sorry, insurance scam.
Yeah.
But what is fascinating to me is the fact that he didn't own it. So, did he get picked up? But my thing is, what would there be to gain from them leaving the ship? What was there to gain? Because nobody came and claimed it. It wasn't like he said, okay, listen, I want you to, we're going to keel haul everybody off of the ship. We're going to leave and you can have the ship. Okay, that only makes sense if the ship is found years and years later, right? This ship is found 10 days later with nobody on it.
And
Not
it
a
wasn't
single solitary
ransacked.
person. And the belongings are still there.
Yep.
I'll tell you an interesting thing. It also reminds me of what was it? Tunguska, not Tunguska. The people that ran out of their tents. Siberia. Yeah.
Reminds me of
Dyatlov
Indigo.
Pass.
The Dyatlov Pass. Yeah. I mean, obviously that looked like more of a struggle, but just up and leaving. And this is something that is notorious in a lot of these incidences, is the fact that things are just left. Nobody thinks to grab anything. It's much like the missing 411, where shirts, shoes, coats, boots.
They do
It's all-
have interdimensional theories about and alien abduction theories about this one as well, of course.
Which I am not surprised, because
Yeah.
people have those kind of theories.
Yep.
I don't mean to take your thunder. Please continue.
No, you're good. And what do you think about all this, Spider?
I think those are all good points. It's what really makes this a fascinating case, because there's no good answers. There's no way to know exactly what happened, because there was not enough evidence. There's only, every time you look at another part of it, you end up with more questions.
Yeah.
You start thinking, okay, well, what if this happened? Well, that makes sense. But why would they do that? Well, maybe they did this. Well, why would they do that? Maybe because of this. But why would they do that? And it just turns into this spiral of just,
maybe.
it just drives you kind of away from the central point. And it could have been something really super obviously simple that we can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I'm
it could have been
struggling-
something that more correlates to the times.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at it. We're looking at it in the lens of today, how we would do things, right?
Maybe they all got scurvy and they had to go see a doctor.
Maybe. But what's interesting is that with the Flying Dutchman, it's just a disappearing boat. It disappeared. That's the end of it. It's not like you can be like, yeah, what about this and that? It probably sank.
Yeah.
All right, but it disappeared. You don't have any answers because it's just poof, gone. This thing still exists.
It's the people that
I would
disappeared.
believe to this day. I don't know if they scrapped it, or they scuttled it. I don't think they did. I don't think they would scuttle a piece of history like this.
Wait a minute.
But the fact that the people disappeared without a struggle. If there was a struggle, you could easily put this thing to bed. You could say, yeah, something happened. The crew got a little out of hand. Things mutinied. People died. But nothing. And food was left. Belongings were left. It was like still in pristine condition outside of these fumes and outside of a pump that just needed cleaned out. And I feel like, how long was this guy a captain for? Does it say how long this dude was a captain? Was he on other ships besides the Mary Celeste?
It didn't say exactly how long, but it said that he was like a well-respected captain.
Once again, if he's a well-respected captain, he would know his ship. He would know, okay, there's probably some debris here in this pump. Once we land, we're going to get it cleaned out. We're going to get things cleaned out and taken care of. That wouldn't have scared him. I don't feel like this dude would have been scared about some fumes. I feel like he would have been like, nah, because this isn't a ship. Let's see. How was this ship powered?
Just
wind.
Power, just wind.
Just wind.
And the rudder.
There would be no flames. There's no, it's not a steam engine. You know what I mean? They don't shovel coal into it to make it go faster. It's not a steamboat, not Steamboat Willie.
Now, something that is always a possibility, and again, this is just more questions upon questions upon questions. There's always the possibility that there were a high amount of fumes, and somehow perhaps the captain got incapacitated and couldn't make the decisions. And maybe the rest of them panicked and said, well, we can't just, leave the ship completely because he'll probably wake up if we get him fresh air. Let's get away from the boat far enough to get fresh air so that the fumes can dissipate. Because maybe somebody did understand part of it. But again, that's more speculation. There's no way to really know.
Would the fumes make a person hallucinate?
Maybe. It didn't
specify. I mean, it is alcohol fumes.
Yeah,
and it is
industrial.
So it's not just like you getting drunk or something like that.
Correct.
It's heavy duty things that can mess with your brain chemistry. People there was this is partially relevant because of just the level of alcohol. There was someone in town here who was recently arrested because they were drunk on hand sanitizer, and so they were super violent and because it was messing up their brain because it's chemicals. It's not just them getting drunk, it's chemicals a lot stronger than what you're going to drink from a drink. And so while that sounds silly that, oh yeah, they're drinking hand sanitizer, this is kind of the same sort of thing that was industrial alcohol, but possibly even more concentrated because it's used for industrial applications. And it's not meant to be ingested or inhaled or any of that kind of stuff. And it can have the effects. It can mess you up. Whether it'll give you hallucinations or not, I don't know, but it could. I mean, people's brains are different.
Is there a top-down view of the ship? Is the ship still around?
No, that's what I was.
I'm sorry. We'll
that's
get
what
to
I was
that.
saying a minute ago. When it got scuttled, it did get scuttled. That's what I was looking up a minute ago when you said that.
Okay.
It did get scuttled on January 3rd, 1885, when the Captain G.C. Parker rented aground in Haiti for the insurance scam.
So they didn't even bother recovering it. Did it sink?
It said the plan failed. The ship did not sink completely, and the fraud was later exposed. But they did decide to scuttle it after that.
And because there probably wasn't obviously photography in that regard where you could just pull all the cameras out, take a picture. It was one of those ones that probably took you had to sit there for an hour to take a picture.
And this
you wouldn't get a good top down, because I would love to know on board this ship where those barrels of industrial strength alcohol were and where the wheel of the ship to steer it was. Because
I'm pretty sure the alcohol was under the ship, like in the
cargo hold.
Yeah.
Right. If that being the case, right, and this is an open air steering vessel, so you're going to be outside in the air, right?
Yeah, aerial photography did not even exist at that time.
Well, that's because they were busy building the Nazca lines, not the point of the conversation. I want to know if the steering wheel, there's probably a name for it, but the wheel was above where they stored the alcohol, because if not, that the fume idea wouldn't make sense, because you're not going to be able to smell it all the way there by so the barrels had to be underneath for him to smell it, because you had to get a sense of what's going on. And maybe they were checking on the cargo. Obviously, you're going to check on something that you're carrying, make sure it's still in good working order, make sure it's still there, that it hasn't dumped over. I get this. However, what still is at the top of my question list is where was the alcohol stored?
That actually, I looked it up while you were talking, and that is actually very interesting that you bring that up, because it says, no, the wheel was not above the alcohol storage. On the Mary Celeste, which was a 100-foot brigantine, as we discussed, the wheel was located on the poop deck at the rear of the ship used to steer.
Mm-hmm.
The alcohol cargo was stored in the main hold, deep in the center and forward sections of the ship below the main deck. And the lazarette, a storage area mentioned in reports, was in the stern under the poop deck, but this was for the ship's gear, not alcohol. So it basically sounds like they were on opposite ends of the ship. So that pretty much sends that theory out the window.
At this point, I don't know what to say because like I'm trying to come up in my brain with the best way that this would have taken place, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
The concept of these barrels just doesn't fit where it should.
Maybe they were kidnapped by pirates.
I mean, it's always, here's another theory that we can't prove that's just out of left field. Maybe they were boarded because somebody thought, oh, you got a bunch of alcohol. And then they got mad that it wasn't alcohol that they could drink. So they took
killed them all.
Well, they took the family thinking, we'll hold you for ransom. And then they found out they weren't worth very much. You know,
but that doesn't explain why they would have used the rope to the lifeboat.
Yeah, so
they would have took them on their own ship.
Stuff.
Again, it's just more questions that you can't answer. You keep thinking more deeply into it and becomes more mysterious, which is why it's such a good story.
Such a good
and it's not even just a story; it's a factual ship because they had it. It got wrecked.
It still existed. Yes,
and it's fascinating. You can never solve it, and
it's
you want to.
It's a wormhole. It's a wormhole of quandaries, is what it is. Because you could sit here all day and be like, well, what about? Because there's just things that don't add up. You know, with the Flying Dutchman, it adds up. All right, dude probably sailed around, was trying to be too with it.
Got in the storm.
Ship wrecked. It sank. Or it got lost. Ended up somewhere, you know, far, far away where, once again, it wrecked and collapsed. This thing still existed and was used in an insurance fraud scheme.
Yep.
Right? Where'd these people go? And why did they go? That's the thing, is why and where. Because, and first of all, why would you take the baby off? I mean, I get why you would take the baby off out of safety, but at the same point, it's like, this isn't something where like they're just leaving the ship to go for insurance fraud, right? They're not going to let the ship just go. He has to sail the ship. That's his bread and butter. I'm sure he makes pretty good money for the time being a ship's captain as he's being. My thing is, once again, the alcohol wasn't located in the back of the ship. It was located in the middle to the front. You're not going to be able to smell those fumes. You could have still had the lifeboat if the alcohol exploded and made it to the lifeboats in time. How many barrels were on that ship? Did it say?
1,701.
Which is a lot of barrels.
That's a lot of barrels.
That is a lot of industrial alcohol.
If
that really makes you ponder.
If that explodes, the ship's done. You're not going to be able to get to a lifeboat.
That makes you ponder. I mean, it's possible too that the pump at the time was malfunctioning, and then maybe it was potentially causing sparks.
But they had two pumps, right?
Well,
and maybe somebody saw that and said, "Hey,
isn't it?" But
speculation.
How far away was the pump from the alcohol? That's 1,000 barrels. God bless America. That's a lot of barrels.
Yeah, Again, the best I can do is come up with different potential scenarios.
Potential being the key word.
That are scientifically possible, but then where's the evidence? The ship wasn't burned, so whatever that happened didn't happen.
Okay. It says the bilge pump and the alcohol barrels were both located in the lower hold of the Mary Celeste, but exact distances were not documented.
But close enough maybe by the fumes as they were leaching into the barrels, because that does happen. That's a common thing in any alcohol production. And maybe somebody went down there to check on it, saw this pump throwing off some sparks because some metal got stuck in it. The gears weren't turning right and something, and freaked out. And maybe they convinced the captain.
2 feet.
And they thought, oh, well, we'll go in the lifeboat and stay tied just in case nothing happens. And if nothing happens, we'll reel ourselves back in. But again, the other valid question that Rob asked is, why wouldn't you want somebody to stay behind just in case, to keep an eye on it and to make sure that the rope doesn't cut off while everybody else is in the lifeboat?
And speaking of which, what cut the rope off?
And did it happen at the time or did it happen later? So... because maybe they all got in and thought, oh no,
They did find out that they believe that they found the ship within 10 days of it, going on its journey. So that's one reason they were so confused, is because they thought that, it having been such a long period of time, they thought it would have already reached its destination, which is why they were concerned when they found it. And they were like, hey, we got to go check this out and examine it closer and, see if we can figure out what's going on.
What kind of pump was it?
It was a bilge pump, Bilge.
Let me see here.
And this right here says the bilge pump drew water from the lowest part of the hull, typically near the keel, which would be centrally located and close to where the barrels were stowed.
Okay, so I just looked this up.
Yeah.
Yes, bilge pumps can produce sparks, creating a significant fire hazard if fuel vapors are present in the bilge. While many modern pumps are designed to be ignition protected, sparks can still occur from faulty wiring, worn out motors, or at the float switch during activation due to inrush current. So the newer pumps can still produce it, but bilge pumps could produce sparks. So
they didn't have electronics at the time, but they had metal gears and they had different things, and they were made of mostly wood. So you had to be careful with it down there. I mean,
fire hazard.
A lot of people assumed that because it's down in the bilge where you kept a little bit of water, because old ships and even new ships, you keep a little bit of water in the bottom of the boat for flotation purposes. It's physics, and it's
metal on. So this one says,
or you can keep alcohol down there.
Manual, hand-operated, or mechanical devices made of wood, brass, or iron. Because they did not use electricity, they could not produce electrical sparks. However, metal-on-metal friction could theoretically create mechanical sparks, though this risk was minimal compared to modern electrical hazards.
So it's interesting. It's a possibility again.
Maybe they got anxious.
Who knows? Maybe somebody just happened to catch that rare moment. You go down there, you're looking, and oh man, our bilge pump there's stuff kind of clogging it. It's cutting sparks. We got to do the best we can and get off the boat and then come back, and then disaster. I don't know. I mean, that's my best theory.
Yeah.
I think something of that would happen.
You might have figured it out. Because this actually all lines up. If they saw the spark and they knew about the fumes, they could have gotten scared, got off the boat for a few minutes, and then I looked into the frayed rope, and it says right here, the rope trailing the Mary Celeste, likely used to tether the lifeboat, obviously, could have been destroyed or severed by a sudden gust of wind, catching the sails, causing the ship to lurch forward and snap the rope under tension.
Rough seas, steering it.
Yeah, rough seas or a storm with waves straining or chafing the line until it broke, chafing against the ship's rail or hull, especially if the rope was already frayed, a deliberate cut by the crew if they feared the lifeboat would be swamped or dragged under, or a freak wave of underwater shock wave capsizing the lifeboat and snapping the tether, which we briefly mentioned earlier, if they tried to get away from the boat, and maybe that's why they never made it to land. And it says the frayed end found trailing in the water suggests that it broke under stress, not a clean cut. So I think we just figured it out. They got scared, they got off the boat, and then it,
Here's another thing. So I looked up if bilge pumps could be turned off.
They can, right?
Yes, 19th century bilge pumps could absolutely be turned off, as they were almost exclusively manual, hand-operated force or suction pumps requiring human power to function. These pumps, often consisting of a piston and cylinder, ceased working immediately when the operator stopped pumping the handle, effectively turning them off.
Yeah, because I think it said in my research, I think it said that they actually did have it turned off at the time because it was messed up, and so that's why they had it turned off.
So the spark theory doesn't work. The spark theory doesn't work.
It does, because they had more than one bilge pump. They had more than one. And
but
the other one's
bilge pump is broken, right?
Only
the
one
other bilge pump. The other bilge pump wouldn't have produced sparks. The only way that makes sense is if he was worried about that happening. But if he's worried about that happening, was he in incidences before where the bilge pump produced sparks?
And like you just said, if it couldn't produce sparks, if there was only one working, then I guess that doesn't work either.
No, if there's one working and it's working to maximum capacity, right? Because maximum capacity would mean that there's no grinding of metal on metal. It wouldn't have been able to produce that spark.
Okay, I see what you're saying now.
Is broke. It doesn't work.
They turned it
So it
off.
couldn't have made the spark because it
No.
wouldn't be interacting with the other one.
So he had to be paranoid that it was going to make a spark because
But
it
if
said the possibility of
But
making
like
a
you said,
spark
if he's a
is
good,
minimal.
but he was a well-respected captain, so he
Wha-
should have known how that stuff works.
See, this is it. This is the problem. It's just a circle. It's just a
Mhm.
it's a cyclical argument. It just goes in a circle because
Yeah.
once you think you figured it out, boom, no, you don't got to
Nope.
figure it out.
Dang, so close.
Yeah,
I
because it
mean,
wouldn't be on. It wouldn't
There's
be
so
on.
many directions you can go with it, and you can. Every story ends with, "But why would they do that?" And that's the big question. What was so frightening that
The Kraken.
forced them to evacuate, or what was so dangerous that it said, "Hey, get off the ship right now," like people with swords or whatever? I mean, because you didn't see, there's no signs of violence.
Yeah,
Well, no,
because
There's
they
no
were
signs
killed
of,
by
like-
aliens.
So they just
duh.
ran them off there just for fun.
But wouldn't they
Let's throw
keep
these
it?
people off
Wouldn't
the
they
ship.
keep the boat and then take the alcohol to sell themselves or to do something with it? Because
The captain's personal belongings were still intact. They weren't touched,
Mhm.
weren't moved. Food was still there.
nobody rifled through it. Nobody was
No.
looking for gold. Nobody was looking for small
They
change in your
just
pockets.
disappeared.
And nobody had a
See?
beef with him. If he's a well-respected captain, nobody's
A
gonna. And there's
well-respected
there's
man.
7 other men, 7 other crewmates, 7, right? Even a mutiny doesn't work because what you would in a mutiny, you would take everybody that you don't like and kick them off the ship. You're not going to
Yeah.
leave the ship. It's your ship now. That's what a mutiny. That's stupid. You're gonna commit a mutiny, right, and leave with the person you're mutinying against.
Oh
You're
no,
just gonna
that's
be like, let's go.
that's their
Wait, what?
theory. Is after they did the mutiny, they were like, "Oh wait, I don't know how to pilot a ship. Let me just get off of here."
But that doesn't make sense either because
Why would you do a mutiny
Why-
if you didn't know how to pirate a ship?
and the thing is, like, you would want that big, huge ship because how many lifeboats were there? 1, right?
Yeah.
So even if they mutinied to kick them off the ship, where are they going? Where are the people that mutinied going? Where are they going? We can't do the ship. Are they going to swim?
Yeah.
Might as well swim. No, they're going to try. And if here's where your part breaks down too. The captain handpicked these people. And he
Yep.
said, I am happy with the people I picked. So they knew what they were doing. He didn't just pick some bums in Nova Scotia and said, you know what? This is it. This is the crew. They didn't just assign a bunch of dudes in the streets that said, you know what? We've never ran a ship before. Let's give her a good old shot and see what happens. And the cargo was alcohol, which would be basically toxic. And so you would want a good crew to be able to pilot something that dangerous. And he took his wife and he took the child.
Don't forget about the St. Elmo fire.
That was also part of the Flying Dutchman last week.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense. There's no logical explanation as to why you would get off that ship. And once again, because you could be like, well, the captain, maybe he didn't know. He was an experienced captain.
Yep.
He would know exactly what to do in that situation. And I would think an experienced captain, if we could break this down even further, he's going to know that you don't attach the lifeboat to the rope because the rope would fray and snap.
Yeah.
He would know. If he's been a captain for so long, he's going to know about winds. He's going to know about waves. He's going to know about tidal pressure. He's going to know about the weather. He's going to know unless he never sailed that area before. Now, if he did sail the area before, this just makes us into a whole quagmire, to be quite perfectly honest.
Let's find out.
I'm sorry. We've turned this into an episode of, what could it be, but it isn't that.
But isn't that the fun part about it?
It is fun because with the Dutchman, you're like, it's probably sank. There's not really much
Okay,
to it. The
here we
legends
go.
are cool, though. Go ahead.
It says he was an experienced mariner, but there is no evidence he had sailed the Azores route before. The 1872 voyage from New York to Genoa was his first command of the Mary Celeste, and likely his first time navigating that specific stretch of the Atlantic. His last log entry on November 25th, 1872, noted the ship was about 6 nautical miles from Santa Maria Island in the Azores, suggesting he was approaching the islands for the first time on this journey. While he had over 18 years at sea and commanded other vessels, prior records do not confirm previous voyages through that region. And something else I read earlier said that when he was going through that region, they were 120 miles off course when they found their ship.
The weird thing is, if the logs are correct, then he should have been in the sweet spot of the weather.
Yeah,
Facts.
Because the weather in that area, it said, was mild. Now,
Even
the
during
Atlantic
that time.
Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean is notorious for having terrible storms, for being really unpredictable.
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult to sail than the Pacific most of the time. It's a lot less predictable. You can predict some of the seasons and the hurricanes and things with the Pacific. I mean, all the oceans are still dangerous, but the Atlantic is known for being especially rough, even in modern times. But in that, where they were supposed to be, if that's accurate, if he was right about where he was, then it should have been great weather. It
Yes.
should have been smooth sailing. Now, if they were off course already, and the boat didn't just go off course after the fact, then maybe they did find rough weather. But again, the boat's still intact. The ship
But why
is
would
still
you leave the
intact.
boat in rough weather? That'd be even a worse
Same
idea
thing,
than the other
again,
ideas.
You know,
it's all broken.
Oh, there's crazy waves. Let's jump onto the smaller boat. That's a great idea.
yeah, none of that part really makes a lot of sense in the story either.
And he was a captain for 18 years. You
Yeah.
mean to tell me in 18 years he didn't experience turbulence? No, he knew how to pilot
He would have
that
known
ship.
if he was off course.
Mhm.
And he would have known the weather. Now let me ask this: did they know the weather at that point? Like, is there any side stories where they had somebody say, okay, the weather at the Azores and that area was a little rougher that time of year, and the off chance that, hey, you know what? That was the one time that it was bad weather. That's what I want to know. Because then we have a whole nother conversation. But if the weather was fine, it was just great and good and fun times ahead.
No, they did not know any specifics about the weather at that particular time. They had encountered moderate to rough seas, with the De Gracia reporting strong northerly winds in the days before finding the ship. But that's
Sounds
all it
typical
says.
for the
It
Atlantic
says,
Ocean, honestly. Like nothing out of the ordinary.
It says they noted in their last log entry its position near the Azores, where gale force winds and shifting weather were recorded. However, the crew had no way to predict these changes in advance.
But did they say it was rough weather? Did they say we're having rough weather right now?
That's what it says when they found the Mary Celeste.
But the log, did any of the logs say
No.
we're having some? Okay.
Nothing in the log, only when
And
they
this is
actually
after it
found
was out when they found it off
Yeah,
course.
this is after
Yeah.
they found it off course.
Which, well, okay, that makes sense, right? Your boat's going to go where
Yeah.
the boat's going to go. But once again, if it's not bad weather and if you got an 18-year experience captain, by then you should know how to pilot a vessel of that magnitude. There shouldn't be any ifs, ands, or buts. You should be able to navigate quite well. And your alcohol is more towards the front of the ship. Oh man, none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense.
Yep. No matter how you look at it, it's like, and every time, like you said, every time you think you got an answer, it contradicts itself almost immediately.
No matter how you try to slice this thing, it doesn't come out making sense.
Nope.
There's no answer to this that doesn't have a million holes in it.
Yep. Because it's like, I don't know. Maybe it was zombies. Maybe Resident Evil got it right. It was just zombies.
Maybe it was just vampires.
Yeah. The Hollywood got it right for once. It was monsters of some sort.
My final theory, honestly, is that somebody made a bad call and the whole thing went south. And why they made the call, have no idea.
Yep.
Never gonna know.
That seems to be
Somebody
the
made
common.
that call.
That seems
and
to be the
that's-
most common theory, is that they got onto the lifeboat for whatever reason. They don't know exactly why, but they got onto the lifeboat, the rope frayed, and they think the lifeboat went out, and they all at sea, under the water.
Is there anything else you'd like to say, Stephen, before we wrap this adventure that we've had up?
I would like to briefly mention that my introduction to the Mary Celeste was actually Resident Evil Revelations out of everything. I think that was the right name. You know the one.
Yeah,
the
I
one
do.
on the ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought it was wild because I had actually never heard of it before that. And then when I played that game, I was like, oh, this is a really cool story. I should look this up. And here we are.
Well, you did an excellent job, even though I talked a majority of it. But once again, so many holes and so many things that this
So
doesn't
much
make
fun.
any sense. It's a very great ghost ship story, though.
Yeah.
Spider, what do you have for next week? What is your ship of ghost?
We are going to be checking out something that I'm sure no one in this room has heard of before. I was pretty stoked to find this. We're going to be learning about the SS Bechimo.
Ooh, interesting.
Ooh.
This is a ship that disappears and keeps coming back, and no one knows why. For a
Supernatural
while.
did a TV show.
It's like our
that.
friendship.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's not truly ghostly, so to speak, but it is a pretty interesting story.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to it. I want to thank my co-hosts Steven and Spider for today's adventure. We had a blast. Hope you all enjoyed the show as much as we do. Please go like, comment, subscribe. Head on over to youtube.com/@ This Uncanny Earth. You can email us at thisuncanny@gmail.com. And finally, if you want to get merch and cool stuff and see what the happenings on the happenings are, you're going to want to go over to uncannymedia.net and you're going to want to check us out there. So for myself, Spider, and Steven, why be boring when you could be uncanny? Next week, we got the ship that keeps on coming back. We will see you fine, beautiful folks then. Good night.